And another thing I would like to do is keep it fairly short, because I think the attention span of most people is like 10 to 12 minutes. It's a TV program from commercial to commercial. And I will listen to some programs that wear me out. 6 hours is just too much, or an hour. I think that a lot of things can be communicated and absorbed in a shorter period of time. I mean, there's so much to talk about, but if I could focus on kind of what we've talked about at this point.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, you were just talking about, you're about to go into an experience that you had.
Mm-hmm. It was at my mother's deathbed, and it was 5 years ago, almost to the month, that I went to. I quit my job to be with my mother in the last part of her life. She lives in Lubbock, Texas, and so I went down there to be with her. And it was great because I thought I was dropped from the mothership, and my parents I had to be adopted. I couldn't believe those were my parents. But so I thought it was really important this last period of her life to be together and learn a little bit of each other that we hadn't shared before. Now, it was that morning I went to be with her. It was about 7 o'clock in the morning, and the hospice nurse came in shortly after I was there, and my mother was out of it. She was just peaceful laying there, and Lubbock is a very, very strong right-wing Republican bastion. It's where George Bush carried more in Lubbock County and in the whole state of Texas, it seemed. So everyone is kind of very conservative in nature. The hospice nurse, in conversation, asked me if I was a Christian. And I said, well, I consider myself more of a maverick Christian than anything else. She looked puzzled and said, well, what is a maverick Christian? And I said, well, it's to my understanding that Jesus, we have him more as an exception, and he should be an example. And I think Jesus and the Christ are two different things. Jesus is the person. Christ was the consciousness that that person held. And the third thing, I don't think that he died for my sins. I think it's a matter of preposition. He died because of them. That I didn't understand how God loved me so much that what he held most dear to his heart, that he was going to have sacrifice. That's how much he loved me. And I still can't figure that one out. Then I started reading books about maverick Christians, misquoting Jesus, how we have been fed a story that might not be the way that we interpreted it in Sunday school. But at the last, I said, my mother, her whole life has been spent wanting to experience the kingdom of heaven. And I said, I think that I'm being called to bring forth the cause of the kingdom. The hospice looked at me and says, your mother's just passed. And I said, oh shit, what have I committed myself to? But I think that I have stories that relate to, if you want to call it, going into the golden age or the establishing the kingdom of heaven on earth. I think that all this turmoil that we're experiencing is, we're needing to go through this now. It's like my grandmother said, no shit, no roses. That what we're experiencing is fertilizer for something that's far greater. And that we're experiencing an economic leveling on the planet. We're a first world country that's kind of dropping down, but there's some third world countries that are coming up. And I think they call it the flattening of the earth, which is a leveling. And I think that's kind of needed because I think in the future, the world that we're experiencing today won't be around. And all systems, whether it's political, religious, medical, legal, all systems that we're living under are dinosaurs in their last days holding on with this white-knuckled grip. And things are changing. And I think change are the things that are changing are for the betterment of us all, of people kind. And what you're doing serves an important role, that you're bringing these people together from all over the place that are challenging assumptions. That I don't have direct experience of ETs. In fact, when I first started my journey, that wasn't even mentioned. It was more Gurdjieff and esoteric chakras. The terms that I heard that piqued my interest weren't extraterrestrial at all. This has only happened in the last 10 years that this has been coming to the fore. But I think what we're going through today, we're living in the juiciest period of history. This is the culmination of all times. And here we are. How are we going to weather this ride? In fear, or with our hands up in excitement, going down this wonderful slide into the unknown? We're experiencing consciousness rising from the depths. And I think we've all chosen to be here at this time, some consciously, some not. But the future is up to us. We all create our own reality. Did you ever hear of a fellow by the name of Chet Snow who wrote a book called Mass Dreams of the Future?
Chet Snow, yes, I think I've seen some of that, but tell us more.
He took, I think, 160, 170 people, and instead of past life regression, took them forward. Now, he took them under hypnotic state to the same time in history, but there were 3 separate realities concomitantly occurring. One where everything was bad, it turned bad and sour, chaotic and destructive. It's what we're experiencing now, only more so. The second reality was back to the earth, back to the garden, so to speak. And the third one was to the stars. 3 realities happening at the same time. And this is kind of I don't think he had any answers, but it was an interesting treatise that he put forward. And I can see how, as we create our own reality, some people are just having a hard time, and some people are living joyfully. And I've chosen to live joyfully. And synchronicity comes into play. I lost my house to fire, lost everything. And I thought I lost my girlfriend, my house, everything. And I thought of all the billions of people on the planet, I'm at the very, very bottom. And a good friend of mine, I was at Goodwill one day, buying a glass to drink out of and started crying. And I called my friend, and she came and took me out of Goodwill, took me in the car, hugged me and says, "That's okay. You can have a pity party, but it shouldn't last more than a week. Then you have to get on with life, because everything that you're going through has been given to you for a purpose and a reason." So I started, I had my pity party. And interesting thing was that I had lost my house twice to fire, 18 years apart on the same day. And I thought, what am I doing wrong? Why? What is this that I'm creating? And I realized my life has been very exciting. I've had some wonderful experiences. I've opened the door to both negative and positive. Well, I'm too tired. I just want to be open to the positive now. And with that affirmation and that intention, that's what's happened in the last 4 or 5 years. That's brought me up to where I'm living now in the Cascades. Didn't have a pot to piss on, but I'm living like a king now. Things, the way that my life has turned out has been phenomenal. And I can tell you I can tell you why it's happened, but I couldn't tell you how. And I don't think we're designed to know how things happen. I think that if we set an intention, we know that we're going to get somewhere, but we don't know how in the world we're going to do it. And I had a chance of meeting Peter Caddy in Kansas City. Do you know of Peter Caddy, the Fenton Experience?
Right.
I heard him talk one evening, and he told me, I don't know if maybe are we being recorded now?
We sure are.
Oh, okay.
No, we're
Well,
on a roll.
okay.
Like we agreed.
Okay.
This is the conversation.
Well, the Fenton Experience, for those that aren't familiar with it, was there was a retired RAF commander, Peter Caddy. He and his wife Eileen were on holiday at a church in England, and while they were in the church, Eileen had a mystical experience. After they came out, she told him that she had heard the audible voice of God. And he said, well, I've been married to this woman for 35 years and found her to be of sound mind, so I had no doubt she had a valid mystical experience. Until a year later, this voice came to her again and told her that she needed to relocate to this remote area of northern Scotland, almost in the Arctic Circle, and start a garden. He said, now things changed. He says, she had the experience. I didn't have the experience. I had to move out in faith. He says, now there's where the challenge comes. She was the one who had the direct experience of the divine. Well, they packed up their boys and took a trailer and moved to this area of northern Scotland. And within 5 years period of time, they had roses blooming in January, delphiniums are 8 foot tall, 40-pound cabbages, and word caught on what was happening. At this time, it turned into a family or a group of individuals creating this community. And it was one evening in a radio program that some investigators from the English Botanical Garden Society came over and to view the gardens. And it was at that program, one of them said, we've seen these things that have been done here and things that have been produced. And in many cases, you have plants that are superseding growth, and royal gardens have been established for over 300 years. You're not telling us something. What gives? He says, gentlemen, you found us out. We're in communication with a higher spirit realm, the devas, that they're overriding and guiding spirits that we all have the ability to tap into and to be co-creators, that we are the missing link. Divine is wanting to connect with us. Nature wants to connect, and we've turned our back towards both until recently. Some people are waking up to this. And when you're in the garden working, you think, well, I'm going to do something over here, or I'm going to do this over there. Could it be that thought was there before you and that we're receptors of thought instead of generators of thought? And that's where I think our ego comes into play, that maybe the idea was there and I just caught it. I tuned into it. And I think that's what, after we're awake, tuning in to become attuned to a greater consciousness. We're called, each in our own way. Each person, whatever that thing is that trips their trigger, was planted there before they got here. And the doors will open for everyone to achieve things that have higher purpose and meaning. All we have to do is go to that threshold, and that's usually fear, because everything we want's on the other side of fear. And moving out in faith is a giant leap to step into the unknown. But I tell you, once you start that dance, it's wonderful.
When we started talking today, we started we started talking about the works of Lyle Watson, and I wondered if you could share some of that again.
Okay, I first heard of Lyle Watson. It was 1976. He was speaking as one of the speakers at the World Symposium of Peace. A friend of mine attended and gave me a series of tapes from different presenters, and I was really riveted by not only what he had to say, but the way that he said it. He was so mellifluous, and his descriptions and his stories were great. And he, as a tidy-minded biologist, felt that there was he wanted to look and study the evolution of consciousness, and this is what the lecture was about. Lyle Watson is the person who coined the term the 100th monkey phenomena, which is where consciousness reaches a critical mass, it becomes common knowledge. One person might have an idea, and a slow plotting of this idea catches on until a critical mass or a number of people catches it, and it becomes common knowledge. He was a research biologist for Desmond Morris, who wrote The Naked Ape, studying the human as a primate. And he also studied under Lewis Thomas, who wrote a book called The Lives of a Cell. And I won't go into that part of it, but it's quite interesting and has a direct bearing on what we're talking about. But I want to keep my talk a little limited. And he said, let's look at the animal kingdom as a way to look at ourselves. He says, for example, let's take a colony of army ants, African army ants that might have a biomass of 150 to 200 pounds. It does everything we do. It eats, it secretes, it replicates, it goes to war, but it does it dispersed over a large area. But if you step on an ant or create harm to any part of that colony instantaneously responds as a whole. Well, we look at us. We're divided and rented. We're a series of we're different systems put together, that we have organs that function independently of one another, but for the benefit of the whole. That we put all this, or it is put into us, and put on us. Central nervous system, a spine, and a brain is on the top, and we call it me. But we are a symbiotic relationship of nature inside of this cell that we have. Each one of us is a cell. Anything, that's one thing he mentioned, anything, this is what the mitochondria did, those first replicators, those coils, immortal coils that spin, that just keep going. They don't die, they just keep going on and making more, and they switch on and switch off. We call them the genes. And that, how do I put this? But we are part of a larger cell too. That not only are we just like that one little army ant, we're something bigger. We're that whole colony. And we have the ability to be part of a collective. We are part of a collective, or we are consciously a part of that collective where we know what we're supposed to do. And I don't know if that...
Well, what came up for me during the conversation was as follows. It's sort of comparing the hive mind and the reptilian mind. In other words, the mantid mind, the insectoid mind, which is a hive mind. Okay. So that the ants are insectoid, and they tend to have a hive mind, and humans and mammals really tend to have more of a reptilian or a mammalian mind, which is individuated.
Well put.
And then we say, well, we have a collective mind at the noosphere, or in the collective unconscious. However, on the planet, say, you could say that the current struggle, see, these are just different ways of looking at things. You could say that the current struggle between, say, the Rothschild, Rockefeller, US, Israel, UK, although it's playing both sides, Federal Reserve forces versus the Asia, China, BRICS, other forces, is that of the reptilian brain, reptilian mind versus the hive mind reptilians versus the mantids, a kind of look at, well, who's going to dominate the planet? And a certain element of reptilians, the Dracos, who signed a treaty through the Greys in 1933, at the same time as the Nazis did, this was in the Roosevelt administration, have been like tearing up the planet. First they did World War II, then they did World War III, after they did World War I, and they're just tearing up the planet, the Draco reptilians. So now the mantids are coming in from the fourth and fifth dimension to chill us out and balance things out. And the Chinese mind is much more of a hive mind. Now, you can look at that through the filter of, oh, it's a collective unconscious, it's systems mind, as Lyle Watson looked. You can say, oh, it's the ego that's filtering. Well, also, it's different parts of the brain and how the brain functions. I found out a lot about that when we did a panel with U.S. Marine Captain Randy Kramer, who's been 17 years on Mars and who's had to deal in peacekeeping and combat both with reptilians and mantids on Mars, insectoid mind and reptilian mind at the intelligent level. And of course, there was also on the panel UK Town Councillor Simon Parks, who says that he made an agreement to take on a mantid soul. So at the soul level, he has a mantid soul, and his teachings come from that. His teachings come from that ground of being. So it's very, very interesting. So it seems to me that yet another aspect, you know, there have been so many layers that have been unfolding, is that humans on the planet are now shifting. It's not only hybridization of bodies, it's hybridization of mind. We're kind of shifting over toward a more mantid, insectoid type of mind versus a reptilian mind that has been that much more predatory. Now it's more balancing. And that's proper. Look, if we share one nest, the planet, we should have a hive mind to really husband it and take care of it, husband and wife it.
Yes, I agree.
And take care of it, and you know, not foul the nest and try and destroy it and try and exterminate ourselves. Actually, it's other species that are now trying to exterminate humans and exterminate this version of the planet, you know, and have driven, you know, our fellows into unconsciousness. But I think that we can get them around, because we were talking about awakening, that the awakening is really part of this. Yeah. Could you talk more about that?
Well, even the word awaken. Are you familiar with Gurdjieff, George Gurdjieff?
Yeah, sure. But tell us.
He had a series of cafe discussions with Peter Ouspensky, and in one of the discussions, he says, you know, I'm saying something and you're shaking your head in agreement, but does your understanding of the word, is that the same as my understanding of the word? So even when we use the word awake, we might say yes, but can we come to a common understanding of what awakening is? Is it awakening to information, awakening to truth, awakening to our potential? When we say awake, what are we? I hear awaken all the time, and I think there's different interpretations of that. And I don't know if it was recorded. I was talking about, I think the first step is awareness. Awareness of what is happening. Then we awaken, but what do we awaken to? I think the key is to awaken to our potential, to awaken to who we really are, not only as individuals, but as that collective. And that each one of us has our own unique part to play in this. When I think of collective, going back 20 or 30 years, I think of communism or socialism, and you get a negative spin. But I think that's put about through media too, that there is this wonderful organization that rests in the human spirit that allows us to all be different aspects or facets of the divine. And that many people will say the same thing, but in many ways. And sometimes it needs to be that way because we all come from different experiences. I'm the sum total of mine, and you're the sum total of your experiences. They're different, and that brings about a different understanding of words based upon our experiences. And I think what we're doing at this point is learning to dance with one another. And I really enjoy this dance. And even though there's a lot of negative happening, I think to hold to the higher aspects and not be held down by fear, but uplift each other in joy and love.
Right. You're in the United States. What are your thoughts about 2016 is when there's an election cycle in the United States. What are your thoughts about it now? Today's March 29th, 2015.
I see that we're all in the same bus, but half the people are looking out of the right window, half are looking out of the left, and we got a driver that's out of control. I think we need to kick out the driver and look where we're going. And I feel that both parties are just the same thing. They're using division and diversion to create turmoil and to create dissension and keep people apart. I think the issues are in front of us today are far greater than issues that they're putting forth. I think they're smoke screens, and I'm hoping that by that time there will be some information, or the media will begin to represent or play the truth more than a program that's been pre-recorded. So I see myself as a world citizen now more than anything else. I'm part of something greater. I'm a Texan by birth. I have more feelings from being from that state than I do being in this country now, because the country that my father fought to defend, there was a patriotic pride that existed that was real. I think we live with a lot of false pride today. They say, I'm proud to be an American, but what have you done? Are we proud of someone else's back? If we want to do our part, it's time to roll up our sleeves and bring forth our best. And I don't think that's going to be through the lips of a politician that represents us, because I don't think we're being represented. I think we live in a corporate state, and I've heard say that we're not even we're a corporation, not a country. Do you have thoughts about that? I don't understand how we're a corporation.
Yeah, I think that, in fact, I call it three, and it's not just me, I call it the three city-state empire of Vatlanusa: Vatican, City of London, and the District of Columbia, USA, Vatlanusa, and the City of the District of Columbia, USA. The USA Corp has the contract for it's the military arm, and it fights the wars of Vatlanusa. And Lun is the financial and royal arm of the Vatlanusa, and Vatican is the religious and the Jesuitical. They train all the whatevers end of it, and they are they go back centuries. The world's largest espionage agency. And so Fats Fat Lanusa. It rhymes with Medusa. And so, yeah. And so, yeah, so that's, and so there are a lot of cycles. I mean, it's a lot of similarities between cycles that you and I had, maybe different in time, where I think that's one of the reasons that you actually wrote me, where I was living in a spiritual community, and I went back to Texas, and you know, my parents were dying. My mother was dying, and my father then, and that was in Brownsville, Texas. And I became a community health. I was at a community health center down there. So it was, you know, and so and the center that I was at, the spiritual community that I was at, was founded by 150 people who were taken up en masse into a spaceship back in 1973 by extraterrestrials, and said, you know, there's a new era coming, and gave them a blueprint, and they founded they founded a community in Northern Ontario. So I was up there, and I wrote a book about it called The Levesque Cases. And then I went down to Brownsville and helped my mother pass over. But it was like landing on a different planet. You know, it's like, power down. Okay, we are on Earth now. You know, because the fabric is just at a much lower frequency, and it's just like, you know, fortunately 96% of the people there are Hispanic. So I was, and on my mother's side, I'm of a Hispanic and Taino background. Tainos are the Indians of the Caribbean that supposedly have a great reputation. The Tainos were great fun lovers. They, you know, the Caribes Indians were fierce, but the Tainos, which were the Indians that came, they actually traced back, came over the land bridge, and it came all the way down, and they ended up in the Caribbean islands. And what distinguishes them is that they're fun-loving and love parties and musicals and all that.
I must have been.
So that's where all this Caribbean, you know, Barbados, sand of sunshine, Barbados.
Yes.
So that's where all that comes from, is the fusion of African, but of Taino.
And I think life should be celebrated.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to have that attitude. It's a very healthy one.
Yeah. So, yeah, so for me, it was a great grounding experience to come down from this community that had been founded, that had been taken up into a spaceship before I got there, and then came down, and then come down into the earth, help my mother pass over, and then help my father. He was a deacon in a church there.
And this was a shared experience with over 100 and something people that had this experience.
Yeah. And so then I, you know, and then I got the signal to come back to as you say, you're in the Cascades. I'm just a little bit north of you. I guess it still is the Cascades up in Vancouver, Canada.
I think we're about an hour and a half apart.
Yeah. So, you know, and that's just an amazing life cycle. And the way that I see it, it's just the structural element of the positive timeline coming in 2012. And then at that time, the portal, the interdimensional portal of our universe opening up, and has broadcasts of, you know, it's just continually broadcasting waves of unity consciousness. That is like everybody's going,
yeah.
And that's a structural element that is going to like raise everybody up out of like, war, disease, crime, and poverty, which is the frequency that have been playing on the planet now.
Correct me if I'm wrong, that on December the 21st, 2012, we crossed the galactic plane, or we were in process of crossing, going from a negative to a neutral to a positive force. That a frequency is changing. Even the Earth's frequency, what they call it, Schumanns Resonance, which is 7.8 to almost 12, that the vibration, the frequency, the energy is increasing. And it's affecting our DNA. It's switching parts of our DNA on that have been not active for a long time. Do you have anything to add to that? As far as the galactic plane? From a holistic point of view, that describes all of the changes that have been going on. And I just chose to focus on the hologram and the timelines, which are two of the kind of the overall, i.e. the galactic black hole and all of that focuses on the software, the content of the hologram. But if you step back from a designer's point of view, we're inside a hologram that is composed of timelines. That's, if you go into a video game, that's like, okay, that's the base of the game. And then you can switch from a catastrophic to a positive timeline, and then you have it interactive with the consciousness of the free will actors inside the hologram. So is this like a parallel universe?
Those are the script elements, if you're looking at it as a script writer.
Dolores Cannon mentions that I guess she would take people in hypnotic states, and she says, I'm just reporting. She says, this isn't my thing, this is what's coming from people, and that there are, the Earth will divide itself, that it's going through a cellular division, which is the positive and negative, that there will be people who will be part of the old Earth and people who will be part of the new Earth, which is...
Now, there are people who are arguing for or making a case for a merger. There are people, in fact, we'll be having some interviews coming up who are coming up and saying, no, the dark side doesn't want to go off now. They realize that they lost, okay? That they lost. And what they want to do is they want to cut a deal so that they can continue if they flip their behavior.
Continue what?
Continue on with the light, into the light.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So this is about truth and reconciliation, truth, repentance, and reconciliation.
Forgiveness is, I keep hearing more and more about forgiveness and the importance of forgiveness.
Yeah.
And how that is an important part for us to realize how it sets us free. Because without it, we enslave ourselves.
Right. Exactly. So that is I know what Dolores Cannon is saying, and that is also, and I've heard her say it, and I've read her say it, and it was first told to me up on Mount Tuam in the Bay Area in 1982. I had this sage channel it to me, who actually said that, and it was amazing. But I think that in the dimensional ecology, these things are very fluid, and people can actually vote and change all that.
Well,
anyway, I'm just saying that they're different view, that is fluid. It's not written in stone. It's fluid. Now, but what's ending is war, disease, crime, and poverty, and control and suppression, and all that stuff, because that is artificially. It's an attempt to artificially control divine will and to thwart the purpose of the universes and the multiverse, which is to exalt the human soul, which is a holographic fragment of source.
Well, what do you think about the next 2 years?
Well, I'll tell you the side that I'm working for, or the outcomes that I'm working for, rather. And the outcomes are a transition into higher frequencies and the light and cosmic love and a world in which we're landing paradise on earth, bringing the planet up to its blueprint. And we're letting go of all these divisions, inner and outer, which were all induced and on the basis of frauds by controllers at various levels and in various dimensions for their own service to self, ends, needs. That's my analysis and my inner knowledge. So that's the outcome that I'm projecting.
And so it is.
I wish that everybody would really get on that.
When I look at the number of hits, how many people watch this and how many people look at that, and I see when people come to your site, there maybe, of course, I don't know when I get them, whether it's 2 years old or last week, but I look at maybe 2,000, 3,000 people. Then I go to this Psy, this Korean performer. He's got 6 billion hits on one thing. I'm wondering, at this rate, how are we going to achieve anything? But
but all of those numbers are controlled.
You mean that they're not what it appears to be?
On certain cases, yeah. On certain cases, the numbers are a psyop.
Well, it's I enjoy what you're facilitating, and it feeds my soul, and I want to thank you a lot. I talked a little bit earlier that I'd like to kind of keep a little limit to the time.
Yeah, good. So thank you so much